to Final Frontier News.
All right, good evening, guys. A little late start, a little confusion, but it's okay. Obviously, something or someone maybe doesn't want us to start this show. Dave, last week we thought you were taken by aliens or something. When we lost you.
Well, there was unforeseen circumstances, but don't worry, I'm back here in the flesh, alive for now. And if I do go missing at some point in the future, just know I love you all or hate you all, depending on who you are. And I'm just a small cog in the wheel, so nobody's gonna miss me. Don't worry about that. If it's an accident, you'll know.
No, I would miss you if you weren't here. Okay, so we were going to originally speak about retrograde and a few other things like that, but our friend Jesse isn't here, so maybe next time we'll get him. He probably has something crazy going on at his place, but that's okay because move aside retrograde and step in. Well, let's get to the first thing. I know that we have some things about the Anunnaki and Sumerians and things like that we want to talk about, but I had to change the title last minute here. But let's get into this time travel thing, because that's something that people voted on Twitter that they really wanted to talk about this week. We wanted to hear about time travel, so I'm curious as to where you want to start with this, and I've got my own thoughts, but let's let you start and we'll go from there.
All right. Well, like Joe said, people voted on Twitter, and they wanted us to discuss time travel. So we're going to try to give it the best coverage that we can. It is quite an interesting topic, to say the least. But we also have to understand that the human mind works in a certain way. Time, as most people might think of it, might work like a river. You put a little boat in the river and it goes downstream. But time does not work that way. We also have to understand that we as humans are more than just in 3 dimensions. We're in multiple dimensions. Again, we have to remember that time and space is another dimension. So there are multiple dimensions that we are currently living in, and we have to accommodate that when it comes to understanding what time travel is and how it may work. Now, a lot of people out there might doubt time travel, but a lot of scientists have come out and actually said that it does exist and that it is possible, depending on the resources that you have available to actually make it work. So one thing I did want to bring up here, just this article here. There we go. I'm sorry. It's basically a closed time-like curve. And this theory basically states that if you're able to generate the ability to create a closed time-like curve, you can kill, say, for example, your grandfather and not disappear from existence, as you would normally think would occur with a paradox like that, because a general time-like curve or an open time-like curve would have that occur. If you kill your ancestor, you would cease to exist. That's the paradox that comes out of this. Right. So it's very interesting that as of late, there's been a lot of discussion that in theory, you can actually get time travel to work, and you can actually exist not in a parallel dimension, but in the current one that you are existing in. Because we have to remember that under the paradox system of time travel, if you were to time travel, for example, forward or backward in time, you're not actually still in your exact timeline. You're in a very slightly different timeline, because it creates, every time that you would do the jump to another time, you're actually fracturing space-time and creating a new universe at that. This is the multiverse theory that comes into play in string theory.
Right.
So it's very interesting, and I would love to get
it's-
your take on this.
It's like what you see in the new Star Trek movies. Like, okay, something different's happened in this universe, but everything you knew is still happening in a different universe. So
Exactly.
you're okay. We got it. Yeah, no, I get that. I think, in my opinion, as far as right now goes, physical time travel, I have a tougher time believing physical time travel and more belief in the idea that we could maybe, because to physically time travel our bodies, to physically travel through time, you would think we could physically beam to Mars right now. I could get to Mars instantly. And I understand that you could say, well, no, because that's putting yourself like on Mars. Basically, like you have to actually move, to do that. Whereas, if you were to go back in time, you could necessarily you could actually stand in the same place, the same spot as time transforms around you, or you could go in space and use some of the theories that are out there about the way you could bend space when you're out there and the way it works, and however that goes into a whole nother argument. But so that is different. But I think
it's related, though. That's the great thing about this. That you're hitting on something that's undeniable. But obviously, we're trying to stick to time travel right now.
But I think because of that, the time travel is something that would be more mental. That we could acquire it mentally first before we could physically move our bodies back in time a large amount of years. Like, yes, I think we could find a way to certainly go back in time 7 seconds, or to come up with the idea of it. But right now, it's not fathomable to me that I could travel physically back in time, but that I could maybe mentally do it in a different way, or see back in time, or see in the future through some other means. But to me, physical time travel would be tougher, and so that is something that I used to always be thinking physical time travel, and the way that we're talking about time travel. But recently, I've really started to think and explore the idea of time travel without actually physical, like out of body, or using your mind, or transdimension, and whatever else. And so I'm just at the beginning of that. But
now, I really want to quickly add to that is, although I didn't plan to have this go in that direction, you're actually onto something very huge when it comes to time travel. The mind is an unfathomably strong thing, because it's not just an organ in your mind, in your head. It's more than that, and you can do so much with it. There are things called remote viewers. And this isn't just some hokey pokey stuff. The U.S. military has actually hired, and this is documented, remote viewers to do certain operations for them. This has also occurred with regular police when they're trying to actually find a killer from a cold case, or sometimes they call in psychics and stuff. But a remote viewer has psychic abilities. These things have been proven to work, and these individuals are able to look either forward in time or backward in time, if we're going to use that sort of paradigm, or that idea that it's sort of forward and backward. Because technically, there are certain theories that seem to pan out in certain ways that state that the past, the present, and the future are all happening simultaneously, and they're all connected.
yeah,
So you can basically affect all three by changing your energy, or altering your intentions, and just altering the energy balance that you have with the universe. So it's a very interesting concept. But what you're saying is huge, because, again, when you have military groups that are hiring people that are supposedly psychic for the specific reason to look forward, backward in time at certain locations, it gives credence to that understanding of time travel.
right. And so I've heard this idea of remote viewer before. You gotta type something for me to do it. And it's been convoluted in my mind, not because there's so many different. I just think there's so many different reports of it. You have individuals claiming to have been remote viewers, and perhaps some of them were, but it's hard sifting through the people that are, that aren't, or that wish they were, that are telling stories. So it becomes a little bit convoluted, but I've heard of that plenty of times. And yeah, the military, there's no doubt about it that whenever there's been reports of these people, that the military has sought them out, And why would a military organization like that seek out these people if there wasn't something to be done, even if it's just testing them? So it seems like there's a lot of, I don't know if we have concrete proof, but very convincing documentation that this has been going on for years. In fact, maybe even more, years ago. And I think a lot of people don't really even know about it. And I've only been somewhat, introduced to it the last few years. So, if you talked about that tonight, that would be great as well. But yeah, that's sort of where I'm leaning towards, of more of that idea of remote viewing.
But let's get towards the real controversial topic, is the physical movement through time and space. And again, as we talked about a little bit earlier, that time isn't exactly as we would perceive it as three-dimensional beings, that we have to understand it's multidimensional. There's also the understanding that you can phase through time backwards and forth, and also through different dimensions, which again is a very important aspect. The man from Tau Red is a mystery that has basically been unexplained since 1954. Here's the story. This Caucasian male appears in the Tokyo airport in July 1954, and he presents his passport from a country that says Tau Red. Well, there's no country called Tau Red. So they find this very odd, and they pull him aside, and they look at his documents carefully and stuff. Everything's official. His passport, it's been stamped multiple times going to Japan, to other countries as well. Now, this is 1954. Photoshop doesn't exist. If you can forge this stuff, you're an expert.
Yeah.
And it's very peculiar because it says that this man is from a country from Tau Red, called Tau Red. So upon a further inspection, they give him a map of Europe, and they say, okay, well, where is it exactly that you're from? So he puts his finger on a little country that you can look up right now on Google Maps. It's between France and Spain.
Right.
It's a little tiny country in the mountains between the two. That's called the Principality of Andorra, and it's been that way for the last 1,000 years. So he was very confused when he saw this map and said, but that's Tau Red. And they told him, no, that's Andorra. So again, everyone's very confused in this situation. So they decide to put him up in a hotel to figure out what's going on while they investigate it, and keep him sort of, I guess, under control, or, under guidance. He was about 3 stories off the ground in his hotel room, and they actually posted a guard outside the door. So they came back in the morning, and they opened the hotel room, and he was gone. And he hadn't left. He hadn't gotten out the windows. The guard was there, posted 24 hours, and he had just disappeared. But from all the information that they took and all the photos that they took of this guy's credentials and documents, it indicated essentially that he was telling the truth. There's a lot of more details that go into this case, but basically I'm giving the gist of it, that this individual basically said that he came from a country that in our dimension didn't exist, but had all this other documentation to prove that he was a valid human being, and that there was no fraud here. So it's a very intriguing case that still hasn't been deciphered.
Wow. And with the time travel and with what we're talking about here, how far? This is a question that I seem to see a lot. How far away from actually being able to really utilize this do you think we really are? Like physical time, or well, speaking of
Well,
that,
that depends. Do you mean in the public or in the private?
sure, the private. I mean, like
Well,
even
the black. Okay, well then that kind of goes into the next topic because, or the related topic, because the Montauk Project, which was based off Project Rainbow, which became Project Phoenix, that was the name for the Philadelphia Project, which happened on October 28th, 1943. That was essentially an attempt to utilize electromagnetic energies to cloak devices in a stealth manner. Rumor has it Tesla was involved there, but that's another issue altogether because I do have my doubts. Nonetheless, this moved and was created into the Montauk Project, which basically happened at an abandoned airbase in Long Island, New York, and it was a place called Montauk, which at that point wasn't very populated, but apparently right now it's sort of like high end, rich people and stuff.
mm,
And at this place, apparently they were working on methods of teleportation, time travel, multi-dimensional travel and such. And there's a lot of information out there that it sounds, out of this world. And you never know, it might be. But it's quite intriguing as to, how it discusses the use of electromagnetic energies to basically warp time and space. Now, this is actual fact. Mathematics proves this, science proves this. You get enough electrical current and basically manipulate it in a certain way to create a field, you will warp space-time. So if you spend enough money in a black project researching a method to try to create a wormhole, something to allow you to travel through time and space, well, there's a very good chance that you can accomplish that.
yeah, I mean, when they look at the that's like exactly what they were talking about with warping space. You're bending it without really having to do anything. Like you're kind of folding it over and over again. And if they can do that, then you could see how you could make time travel possible in space. There's so many different versions of time travel that it's hard to keep up with everything and all the theories and everything that's going on here.
I do want to quickly say, though, because this is a gripe of mine,
Mm.
that Einstein's theory, according to certain scientists today, when referencing Einstein's theory of relativity, they say that when you get closer to light speed, that you're time traveling because there's something called time dilation, which basically, according to Einstein's law, causes you to age slower because time's going slower on your end, while on planet Earth, people are aging, time that passes is thousands of years. That's not time travel. That's time dilation. It has nothing to do with actual physical or mental/psychic time travel. And whenever anybody that brings that up is ignoring the facts that actually point towards this being not only theoretically possible, but actually have already occurred.
Wow. So here's another question for you with time travel. If you can go back in time and you can go forward ahead into the future, how far ahead is time endless, or is there is there a cutoff point? Are we behind 100 years? Are we behind 1,000 years? Are we, how far into the future could it really be possible to go? Because it seems so incomprehensible to think that you could go as far into the future as possible. See, going in the future to me is harder to think about because it hasn't happened yet. But going into the past to see something that's happened already is more. I can imagine that more than I can imagine, going forward in time.
No, I totally agree with you. But when you start to play with moving forward in time, you are basically playing with probability, and quantum physics. You're getting to the point where And again, I would think if I did have the ability to time travel, it would probably be safer to move into the past and the future for that point, because you don't really know the future. The future really is not predefined. It is not only malleable, but it is you can manipulate it. You can personally manipulate your own future. You do have that ability. There's not some fucking, you know, hippy dippy fucking tree hugging bullshit. This is actual,
Yeah.
My point is basically that with the right energies, you can manipulate your own future and you can change your own future. So there's nothing definite. So I would be a little concerned with moving into the future. But according to, again, so many different sources that say that this is not only possible but has occurred, it seems that people are moving forward, backward in time.
That's wild. I mean, if it's and I've heard a lot of other people say that. And my catchphrase on this show, by the way, is going to be "That's wild," because I listened to last week's show and I think I said "That's wild" like 25 times.
Oh, it is wild. Absolutely.
If Justin is listening, yeah, Justin Bailey, you could definitely call in tonight, man. It'd be great. Okay, so there we go. There's some of our ideas. There's some of Dave's ideas. You kind of heard what mine are. I'm more open to the whole idea of maybe the remote view or the mental time travel or the seeing into the future, seeing into the past.
I just want to correct you. These are just ideas that I'm putting out there. We were asked to present time travel, and I'm trying to give a nice varied approach to it, as well as some that's based on factual evidence, or at least what people have stated. Whether or not it's possible, you do have evidence that, for example, the U.S. military did pursue attempts to try to replicate this stuff.
Right.
So you've got a paper trail that follows this and indicates that this has occurred. So again, we're really just trying to put out the facts and let you decide what the truth might be.
Well, I stuck the number in green on the bottom of the screen in case anybody does have anything they want to mention about this, and I'll take some calls on your time travel ideas, time travel, whatever it is, and we'll get into that there.
I just want to reply to Freaky Fry in the chat that, again, depending on whether or not you create a closed time cycle, is whether or not you would have a duplicate of yourself. If you do create a closed time cycle, there won't be a duplicate of yourself. Actually, you know what? I might be wrong in that. I've got to look into that. I know that if you do kill yourself in a closed time cycle, you won't disappear. So, food for thought. Anyways, I remember you telling us that you were going to call in, so I'd appreciate if you would, because you got some great things to talk about.
I would imagine that so much of the time travel and what can happen and the possibilities in time travel is very mathematical, and you could probably, that's why some of it is, able to be figured out in a way, even though we don't have that information. I think it's a lot of distortion too. When I say mental and not physical time travel, I'm talking about seeing distortions, maybe even premonitions, and what goes on beyond that could be actually, picked up on. And 704 is, hey, 704, you're on Final Frontier News with Dave Rose is here tonight. What's up?
Hey, this is Solace from Twitter and everything, bro.
How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing good. How about you, Dave?
I'm doing great tonight. I'm quite enjoying our discussion on time travel.
Yeah, I was going to ask y'all. It's probably time travel, but I've always felt, believe in past lives or anything.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of gets into a little bit of what I was kind of talking about with almost seeing visions or having feelings, or being able to feel strongly about something in 1940s, or feeling like that maybe something's going to happen in the future, and you mention it, so that maybe connects to past lives. Maybe that connects to visions of the future that you caught a glimpse of through certain patterns or waves or whatever it is. So that leads into what you're saying, maybe with what you said.
Because when I was I would dream of things like I never knew what pirates were until like, I got in school and everything, or Civil War stuff. That would always freak me out. I'd wake up in dreams and stuff like that. I didn't know if that was part of it.
What was it again?
When I was younger, before I even knew about the Civil War and stuff like that, I would always have dreams, and I'd be scared waking up from them. I don't know if it was because of past lives or anything like that.
It sounds quite possible that it might be a past life incident because, again, if you were aware and cognizant of these sorts of things prior to your knowledge of them, again, there's a very good chance that you're getting this. Mostly you would get this from a past life. There is a chance, again, as we were talking before about time travel through thought, there is the ability to receive thought from the past into the future. There is again, people have shown this. But usually that's an attempt to send a specific message. In your case, I would actually think that it is probably a past life incident.
Yeah, because I still have them to this day sometimes.
Is it vivid? Do you have any, like, are you able to...
I have names, places.
Have you thought of looking into this? Because that could probably really help you out in finding more about this. If you were to sort of like try to track down this sort of thing, and if you were able to get these names and locations and stuff, perhaps you might be able to prove that in fact that this was a past life or something like that.
Yeah, I'm getting goosebumps right now just talking about it.
But again, another thing people have to recognize is that if you find a situation like this, your normal reaction, excuse me, I'm burping like fucking a motherfucker. I'm burping like a very bad person. But nonetheless,
You're fine.
We it's funny because we were joking because the show, we're supposed to be PG. This is supposed to be a PG show.
I do apologize.
Because of where the podcast is going on to and stuff like that. But we're so it's hard to go from full volume on the other show to this. So we'll figure it out eventually. But we're weaning ourselves off slowly, right? I mean, that's.
But what I meant to say was basically when you do find that point where you're sort of, you get goosebumps, you're sort of resistant to a topic, that's your comfort zone being pushed. And if you can push beyond that, you might be able to find something that's extremely important that you might not have been able to find otherwise. So definitely would encourage you to look further into that because you never know what you're going to find.
All right, I appreciate that.
All right, I like it. I'm very curious about that. If you had more. But just that intensity of that one dream is very interesting. And, it's that thing where, like, you unlock those things in your mind that are hidden or you don't know about. And there's so much talk about, how much of the mind we don't use. And, and I honestly, I don't know. I'm in the middle still on it, Dave. And you find some people, like, they take a drug and they swear that they're smarter or that they can do all these things when they're on the drugs. But then eventually sort of the drugs can destroy you too. So it's hard to say, is the drug, all these hallucinations you have and things you think you saw and heard, is it because your brain was so excited and active because of the drug? Or did you see something in the mind that you can only see when you're on this drug? And that's why it's a hallucinogen, but then and then some people swear, listen, if I take LSD, it unlocks these things in the mind. If I smoke weed, it unlocks these, but I drink alcohol though, and that alters my state of mind too. But I just I'm an idiot. So I don't know if it really does as much as it makes you think you unlocked something. But when we actually can unlock things in the mind, but it's not related to those altering drugs, and you wonder how much of it is mental. And if we find out that there's telepathy in the mind, and you're able to pick up another person's thoughts, if that ever really, and it seems like that you are able to do that, we just don't know how to do it yet, or not all of us know how to do it, and only some of us know how to do it somewhat. That would be another link of something that would make me think even stronger about time travel and that it's real. or more possible, because the idea that our brains, but why couldn't they? Why couldn't our brains connect? Computers connect wirelessly, and our brains are like computers. They work very similar to a computer. So if we can send these signals through wireless modems and things like that, why can't we do it with our brain? And how much safer would the world be if we all could do it with our brains, or learn how to connect into each other? Not forcibly like a rape, but maybe accepting each other's thoughts, or accepting, whatever it is. And maybe me and you, Dave, could play a chess game mentally, a game of chess. Seriously, like a game of chess using our minds and to each other. And eventually, if we ever reach that stage, it'll be amazing, man.
It's unfortunate that we don't have Jesse J here to discuss this, because this is also an important topic that perhaps we should make another video for. But when it comes to psychic powers, telepathy, clairvoyance, I've experienced those. I've been able to prove it to other people using, again, factual evidence. Me actually telling people well prior to an event what would occur with exact detail, and it occurring. Not something about watching the numbers, is actual details to an event. I could give you countless details, but I've experienced this. Jesse's experienced this. Other people I know have experienced this. But again, when you consider psychic powers, ESP, being able to communicate with people without saying words, this exists. And not only that, you find, again, organizations that are dedicated to this, that are connected with big money that's coming in from the military, for example. But if you really want to look how crazy this gets, look at the Russians during the Cold War, where they had specific divisions researching psychic powers and remote viewers.
Yeah.
They spent hundreds of millions of dollars in this sort of thing, in an attempt to supposedly, get one over the Americans in the Cold War. So this stuff is something that exists and is real, and it shouldn't be dismissed, because, again, we know that humans don't use 10% of their brain at most. We know that we're so much more capable of things, and we know that our environment is poisoning us, and we're getting dumber. So it's definitely inhibiting us from being able to have these powers manifest.
I think I'm at what's the word I want to look at? What's the word I want to say? I'm a step behind. I think that's why I'm not very clairvoyant. I'm not very much like that, because I'm just too distracted by things and too hyper to ever, I think, calm down unless I'm under the state of some kind of influence. Whether if it's a drug, or if it's a certain amount of alcohol or weed, or if it's something to calm my brain, because of the way how fast I think, or not how fast I think, but how scattering my brain is. And I think as someone who's has a higher IQ and who is more stable is more capable of feeling these things or discovering these things, because they unlock their brain and they have a higher IQ, so their brain is more active. And so those are why, because normally those people are the ones that come out with stuff like this, and it's not because they're scheming everyone all the time because they're smarter, but it's because their minds are just so much more open. They're able to calculate faster and better and more information. And I think I don't do that. So even though I'm interested in all this stuff and I'm thinking about it, I see it less. I have a lesser chance of having a moment of zen or a clairvoyance or something like that to happen to ESP, because my brain is so noisy. I can barely remember the damn grocery list, let alone things like this. And you would really have to isolate me in the forest, you know what I mean? And it would be hard to do something like that to get me to meditate and to have candles and to have to really focus the mind. It'd be hard to get me to do that because my brain would constantly be racing. Whereas, so I almost have a very low chance of tapping in or tuning into any of this stuff. The only chance I have is that I'm open to and wanting to discover it. But somebody else, in my opinion, like you or Jesse or maybe countless other people that I've come across, have a better chance of actually experiencing it because of just the way that the cells fell, and the genetics grew and the mind grew, and that's it. And that's now you can use that forever, Dave, as Dave's brain is bigger than mine. And Dan the Savage is on the line with us.
Yeah, I got a question for you and Dave about time travel. Have you ever guys heard about the butterfly effect?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm kind of new to it. Can you
Okay. Dave can do this one. I know what it is, but
okay. Basically, if you were to go back in time and you were to smush a butterfly, yes, I said smush.
It's the Homer Simpson episode. Remember that in the horror one?
Yep, that was a great episode.
I love that episode. That's if anybody knows
Time
that
Travel
episode,
Toaster is one of my favorite episodes of all time.
If anybody knows that episode,
It's genius.
Now you don't need to be told the butterfly
I
effect.
cried when I watched that episode. It was so funny. But okay, back to the topic.
Stupid bug, you go squish now. Sorry.
Yeah, you guys have to check it out. But you basically smush a butterfly in the past, and then you transport back to the future. The entire future is changed. Why? Because that butterfly was intended to be eaten by a toad, that was intended to be eaten by a monster. I don't know, whatever the fuck they had back then, and so forth and so on. So you've altered the timeline to the point where you can get just about any different results. So instead of fish, evolving into men, they evolved into, some sort of squid people. I don't know. Again, you could alter the timeline so much from one small little act that it's dangerous to travel through time. That's the whole concept of the butterfly effect.
Makes sense, right?
Totally.
It's wild, man. It's pretty wild. Watch that Simpsons episode because that's like one of the best things to explain it because
it basically explains it quite well.
Dave, couldn't you see? It's funny when we were kids that we saw stuff like this when we were kids from teachers, but I could totally see like a teacher nowadays, like actually playing that episode in a classroom to show somebody the butterfly effect. If you were in I don't know what class would teach that. Maybe. Well,
considering that scientific studies have come out that humans now have a shorter attention span than goldfish, which is about 8 seconds, I can totally understand it.
The humans, what we have to do, and this is another, not to go into a crazy thing off topic, but what we have to do as humans is realize, and the younger, I think the younger kids are accepting of this, because I think a lot of people are listening to this show who are younger. So I think a lot of things that we have to realize is we have changed, and we do consume media and things really quickly, and we want to, we don't have a big attention span and all that. But if you can at least be well-rounded in that, or be somewhat well-rounded in that, you'll be okay. If you consume YouTube like that, or your attention span in certain places is low, but when you are interested in something, say science class, you can sit through a 2-hour lecture in there because you like it, then I'm not as concerned. You know what I mean? I think that people have a less of attention span now for things that they wouldn't have cared about anyway. But it is a good point because I do see the effects of this on YouTube. For instance, if I upload a video that says, maybe the title says something like, who I'm gonna be voting for in the title, and then in the photo there's a picture of like Donald Trump or something, but like maybe in the video I'm gonna explain why I'm not voting for Trump, but I'm gonna vote for this other guy. Now, I'm not going to tell you anything about my politics, but I'm just saying, say that happens. The title says who I'm voting for. The picture might show Trump and, Hillary or something, and then, or just Trump, whatever. And then in the comments below, and I make a 10-minute video. 2 minutes into the video, I go into all how Donald Trump policies, I feel about what his policies are and what he's going to do and all these things. And then 5 minutes into the video, I begin telling you about Hillary. And then 8 minutes in the video, I basically say, and here's why I'm going to vote for such and such. Well, then in the comments below, you'll see absolute hate telling me, Joe, how could you vote for this person, you scumbag? But then, in the video itself, I actually told you, towards the end of the video, I'm voting for the other person. And there's countless videos that on my channel and everyone's channel that have these comments. And not only that, there's comments that get put up within the video being released within 40 seconds, which tells me this person did not ever have a chance to watch this whole video. They just made up their own mind about something and lost it in a comment. And then moved on to another video and didn't even watch the video. I mean, it's an 8-minute video. It's not a book. It's not a lecture in class. It's somebody who they're subscribed to. I make a video and they didn't even listen to it. They just made up their own mind of what I was trying to say and attacked me. And meanwhile, I agree with them. I mean, that's where I see... you know, and every once in a while you see someone write, oops, I didn't read the rest of the video, but usually they don't watch it. They made up their mind to yell, and then they got out of there. And that is an attention span issue that no doubt about it. And Dan Savage, thanks for the call, man. But anyway, Dave, I think there's more to go to with the time travel, but... And I don't know where really to go with it at this point, if you have any more points on time travel that you want to make. But I guess there's so many ways to break it down, and we really could do another video on every type of time travel and how it could be possible. And maybe we could go through and, like, you know, sort of argue or debunk or talk back and forth about.
I think this was a good primer for everyone. And when we've got Jesse here, he can talk more about that because he's got a lot to say. So I think we've covered quite a lot.
Well, let's move on to, and by the way, I do want to throw out the idea of remote viewing or people being used as vessels, either by our government or by people or by groups, or not necessarily by our government, but by groups, or by aliens, to being remoters, or to be people that go back without unwillingly, but their brains are being used. That is that's a more of a conspiracy idea, but it's out there. But let's go into something that's really less conspiracy, because although time travel may be 20% fact and 80% speculation, what we're about to get into as far as the Anunnaki, and as far as really the Sumerians, which is the Sumerians are the ones that we really focus on first. But as far as they go, so much of it, if not all of it, is an absolute fact. And 20% of the Anunnaki side of things may be controversial, but the Sumerian texts and the Sumerian writings can't be denied. And because of that, this is such one of my most favorite topics since the day I heard about them. Dave, I'll tell you why I know about the Sumerians, and the sad part about this, and this goes back to my point, this isn't me trying to beat up on myself or, you know, give you a big, you know, love job, but I've been interested in this since I was, I think, 5 years old or 6 years old, or maybe 8 years old it was, I guess, and I probably know about 30% of what you know. But when I heard in Ghostbusters, Sumerians, I think they mentioned it in one of the first Ghostbusters movie.
They did.
And all those names that they threw out, that sounds scary, by the way. I don't know why those names, they work great in the horror movie, even though it's a kind of a comedy, because it just sounds scary. Mesopotamia, Sumerian, it just all sounds so damn scary. But whatever the hell you want to call it, but it goes back so much. It goes so long, and all the facts and all the artifacts and all the things that they found. It's like, how can this be real? And you connected it to the Bible earlier, and it really does. And you'll go into this again, you know, yourself. You'll mention this to everybody, but in my opinion, seems like the Bible and religion and Christianity really said, let's capitalize off of this and really sucker these people. I mean, that's what I get out of it. But through the book, the Bible, you sort of get a fictional, a partly fictional version of what could have been the truth that was actually way before it, that didn't make it through the game of telephone, let's say it that way. And so I've always been interested, since I heard those names, I wanted to know if they were real. And when I heard them brought up somewhere afterwards, I thought it was something from the movie. I didn't even know it was a real life group of people or whatever. And then I became interested as a kid in it. And then some of the Bible caught my interest too. And then the connections of the Bible and Sumerians is wild, man. It's so interesting. And it's makes more sense to me. The Bible doesn't always make as much sense to me, but that makes more sense to me. Although I do love the Bible as a story. Obviously, I'm not religious really, but the Bible as a story I think is great. And are you talking about the King's version of the Bible, or are we talking about the Dave? What's one of the first versions of the Bible?
Oh, there's Nazarene. There's Gnostic. There's there's a lot. There was a lot of sects, a lot of proto-Christians or Judeo-Christians,
right?
Back when that started.
Well,
which
tell me.
Will be another show, because I'm sure other people will want to know.
Tell me about let's talk about the Sumerians and what we seem to know about them.
What we definitely know is that the Enuma Elish, which is the 7 tablets of creation from Sumeria, or Sumer, which is the land, basically was eventually transcribed into what we know as the Bible, New, Old Testament, and was basically transposed onto the idea of 7 days of creation.
Right.
So that's why we've got that.
7 days of creation. This came out before. We're talking about how many thousand years BC?
8,000 BC. Actually, sorry.
I forget.
8,000 BC. Let me just quickly check here. It was 6,000 BC, so about 8,000 years ago.
Right. And this is so much further before. This is way before Christ, way before, you know what I mean, the Bibles and any of this stuff. There was in Christianity, way before Christianity. Right?
4,000 years.
Yeah. 4,000 years before Christianity. I just want to make that very, I'm trying to look up the other facts about it. They're very clear to everybody. 4,000 years before Christianity. Now, I also want to steer you in the direction of these, and why we know about them is because of the transcribings, the artwork we found. Not artwork, so to speak. It's their language. A lot of it's very sacred too. It seems like
cuneiform, as it's called, is a very interesting language, because what they used in Sumer was clay tablets that they pressed patterns on.
Right.
And these symbols were basically sort of like little arrows. So the combination of little arrows would be their language. A very intriguing language that's extremely difficult not only to read, but to speak.
No.
That's one of the biggest and most difficult things. And one of the authors that is well known for talking about the Sumerian culture and the gods of Sumer, which were known as the Anunnaki, is called Zecharia Sitchin. Now, there's a lot of controversy around him, but we'll get into that in a moment.
Probably because of the Christians. But I'll tell you one thing about this. Another thing about this is this is where your debate in your mind has to go. Is this just the fate of mankind? For every single group or race or whatever that's been created, have they always searched for some kind of God and thus created their own God? And it's all false. It's just false hope that we use to make ourselves feel better. And therefore, the Anunnaki. And by the way, whenever we say the word Anunnaki, of course, you can just think aliens or gods. Either way.
Well, their name literally is those who from heaven came to earth. So those
Right.
who were in the sky came down to the surface, to the planet.
Which really makes you believe that one of two things. Either they're aliens or they're a much more advanced humanoid race on the planet that the Anunnaki were not aware of, such as the example you gave me earlier with, what was it, the King of England or whatever you mentioned earlier. Because it could be entirely possible, Dave, that we've done this on this planet over and over again, and that there was a much more advanced race here at that time. However, that seems less likely because we have no artifacts or anything that we've found, although we do have those crystal skulls.
There's a lot of proof that exists that shows that there was a more advanced, hyper advanced culture that existed on this earth with technology that we still haven't achieved throughout the planet.
Right.
So I would have to disagree with you there.
So, but if that's the case, though, it's possible that they're not aliens, that they actually did come from our own Earth. It could be either one.
I do want to interject and just
wait a
say
minute.
to
I'm
the
sorry.
audience that
You may be able to dispute that with me, Dave, too, based on the spatial relations.
no, I don't. No, I'm not disputing that. I just want to make clear to the audience that although that we're trying to make things, as unbiased as possible here, I'm more agreeing, I guess, on the point where I don't think that this was aliens, because I think this is where the concept of ancient aliens comes into play, and people think, oh, it's ancient aliens. No, I'm of the belief that this was a more advanced society and civilization that existed on the planet, while most people were, in caves or primitive societies. These individuals had the ability to create structures like the pyramids, like Machu Picchu, like Tiwanakan, all these different places throughout the world where we still can't replicate what they did to this day.
Right. So you, yeah, I mean, I struggle with both of those things. Actually, I got to tell you, I got to be honest, Dave. I've always been, the Anunnaki to me has always been, aliens, from another, they've come down from the sky and all these other things. And the advancements they obviously seem to show to the Sumerians and things like that. But
well, I want to hear about this. What I guess puts you on that sort of line of thinking? What is it that you've seen that makes you think that this is a sort of an extraterrestrial race that has specifically come to this planet?
One thing is from some of the artifacts that they also found that they've transcribed. And what was the name? Zachariah?
Zachariah Sitchin, the
Yeah.
author?
Now, I believe it's either him or maybe I'm confused and it's a different person that described in Sumeria. One of the things they described is them traveling to get there to the seventh planet, or 7 planets, or to get to Earth. And there's a tablet, or there's pictures of this that they were given this information, along with many other things of information and pieces of information they were given. That is one of them, mentioning the 7 planets, which makes me think, like, well, how do these people know of these planets? And I guess you could still say that the more advanced race on the Earth itself knew about this because they had advanced telescopes and things like that, obviously, just as we do now, to see that we are the 7th planet, not third rock from the sun, but the opposite 7th planet. But to me, that makes me feel that they're speaking of how they, when they arrived on the 7th planet. Now, you'd have to obviously look this up and find this image. I'm actually trying to look for it myself, because it's through the Sumerian text that this is visualized. And it seems like a lot of, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but to me it seems like a lot of Sumerian, these, pictographs or whatever they're using here, it's almost like a reverse newspaper or reverse book that has photos. Like normally a book would have few photos and much text, where a lot of these artifacts we found, it seems like in Sumeria, have very detailed pictures and along with some text. Do you think that's accurate?
Yeah, that's correct. And you also said that it's sort of backwards, and that's also correct because, again, with the mud tablets that they had, the way that they inscribed these things was to actually write them backwards on a cylinder of hard rock or something else, and they would roll it onto the still wet clay tablet, and then it would actually transcribe in the proper sort of manner so you could read it, and then it would dry
crazy.
out, and that would become their record.
I've heard about like how they did that, and it sounds crazy almost. Like it's unreal.
The effort that it took to actually do that, to know your language, to be able to transcribe it backwards is insane. To know the size of the cylinder so that it would be able to write all this information out and how it would look afterwards. I mean, it's incredible to think about.
That is one of the most interesting things of their writing and just the complications of it. And that they use math. They've proven how they've used math. They use the, what was it? They use the 6-digit a lot, from what I understand.
The Sumerians, actually, their base number was 60.
Okay.
That's insane. I mean, our base number is 10.
Right.
Okay, that's why we have a decimal system, 100 and all that sort of thing. Their base system was 60.
But they also use 12 a lot, which is like our calendar. They use the same.
12 is a derivative of 60.
Right.
So again, you find these numbers 12 and 60 repeated over and over again.
Right.
Not only in Sumerian cultures, but in cultures that came after them that absorbed that information and then utilized that. Again, number 12.
Yeah.
Well, there are 12 houses in astrology. There were 12 apostles. The number 12 is replete throughout all different theologies, religions, that again have basically taken something from the past and adapted it to its current age.
It is very interesting what they did with mathematics. And yeah, a lot what we got from math comes from them, and a lot of what religion or the Christians got and from the Bible came from them. So that is why, especially why when someone says, why don't you, Joe, why don't you believe in the Bible and religion or believe in the certain way? And I can't, because it's although I believe in a lot of it comes from some sort of truth, it not necessarily what it's been turned into, because it's really just sort of a copy of this original work.
Well, the Sumerian culture and the Egyptian culture are very closely linked, although they are separated by a lot of land.
Oh, here's a photo of it.
And the very interesting thing is that the Ten Commandments is actually based off the Egyptian death ritual. And I can't remember exactly how many rules it was that you supposedly had to confront the gods with and say, no, I did not do this in my life. No, I did not do that in my life. And that essentially was adapted and put into the Ten Commandments.
One of the very interesting things about that, too, speaking of stone and inscriptions in the Ten Commandments, on stone they'd use this mathematical structure, I believe. They would use it for everything, and they would use it they would use the mathematics in shape form, it looks like, everything that I've seen. So you see the photo of the shape form of what's divided and or multiplied or whatever. And then the writing below it, which I don't think we can really make out on this stone here, but the pictures we can. And that they've deciphered that, and I think your buddy Zechariah deciphered this, that they would use this stuff to divide land or to divide property, or if you were with a woman or married and you broke up and split up, they would actually, there's proof on the tablets that they would split up what your worth is based on your family and things like that, and they would use it. And they know that that's what the tablet means basically, and that is the word again, wild. It's that long ago, and they were doing stuff like that in mathematical form on these tablets.
And here's what's incredible is that up to that moment in that region, no culture existed. This technology was not there. And then out of the blue, we have a society, a high society with rules, with laws, with language that just pops up out of nowhere.
Right. And just people want to talk about, oh, there was, this, and there was some cavemen, and then it was the dinosaurs. I mean, it's unbelievable that we skip over all of that other stuff and who knows what. And did an advanced society, Dave, leave this, was it a majorly advanced society on this planet who discovered maybe some other races or primitive cultures before they left? Maybe they left. Maybe they said they went over and they saw the Sumerians or whatever, and they visited them, and then they tried to take every trace of what they'd done on the planet off the planet because they were leaving, and they didn't want to leave it behind for these cave people to find and destroy themselves or something. And maybe that's part of why we can't find anything, or maybe everybody was destroyed after they left. There's just so many possibilities, and with this planet being around for so many years, with the decomposing, with the destruction, with the earthquakes, the shifts, the poles, the flips, the flops, the oceans, the acid rain, the volcanoes, the heating, the cooling, it would be very hard to find many of this stuff left, although you would believe that there were structures still here, but maybe they're underwater. Maybe the whole planet has changed that much. But tell me, the Sumerians, dude, this thing is so interesting to me. Everything about this is wild, because when I found out that, they came up with all this stuff like 4,000 years before, and multiple other civilizations 2,000 years before Christ, 3,000 years before Christ, had very similar stories that all kind of matched up, and then they made their way into the mainstream religions. It's almost like a concentrated effort was had to take these stories and flip them.
And that's correct.
It's to be the same thing as if me and you witnessed a volcano exploding, and then we drew a photo of the volcano exploding, and then we wrote some words about, on this day we saw the volcano explode, and then someone, years later turned that into, the volcano's a god because the volcano's going to explode someday. And it's just it's a game of telephone. Although with religion, I almost feel like it's used. They use the ideas to their advantage to control people, but that's what I've always thought.
No, I believe it goes a lot deeper. This is what are referred to as mystery schools. These religious teachings are actually mostly allegories. Yes, they have certain instances that were sort of stapled on very crudely of events that happened supposedly at a certain time. But essentially, these are allegories that are actually teaching something much more esoteric than you might think. So when they discuss certain topics, it's not literal. It's not intended to be literal. It's intended to explain, and again, you have to put this into perspective as to when it came out. Remember, this has been copied multiple times. To explain to the primitive man who had just come out of a major cataclysm, as the Earth records show, to explain, no, the sun is not going to die when it sets. We have to explain to these primitive people that it's going to come back again. So how do we do that? Oh, it's going into the underworld. But don't worry, because if you pray, because we're the powerful people who are protecting you, it'll come back in the morning. So that is essentially how these religions got started, through the teachings of mystery schools, because according to everything that I've read, and the evidence is absolutely overwhelming, humanity suffered a major cataclysm about 10,500 years ago, more or less. Actually, sorry, 10,500 BC, which is about 12,500 years ago. All of the evidence that I've researched indicates this. There was a major cataclysm, pole shifts, mountains exploding out from the earth, major depopulation, major damage to the planet. And that seems to have been the downfall of these ancient cultures that were so advanced that we can't replicate, like Atlantis and like Mu. And again, I would bet my life on this because all the research that I've looked into indicates that this is what occurred.
It definitely seems like something happened. It seems like something was here, and it's been all and typical of what humans have kind of been like as we got more aware or less aware, I guess, in a weird way. Everyone just wants to make a quick buck or tell a story or sell a magazine or whatever it is, and it goes back to that time. Or make you believe in their God and believe in our God, or we're going to kill you. And all those distractions of buy what I'm selling, or I can take advantage of this, or I can control people doing this, or people who die hard believe their God, and if they don't kill you, their God's going to kill them, or they're not going to get the virgins when they go to all this BS, all this stuff that controls and makes people dumb. Has really just taken over. It's gotten worse almost. And we've completely forgotten about this or been open-minded enough to this idea. You're called crazy. You know what I mean? You're called crazy until 1970 when they're able to decipher many of these tablets. Or when some of these tablets, mention certain planets, and we didn't really understand what the tablet was talking about because we couldn't confirm it. But then in the late 60s and the mid 70s, we confirmed it. That yes, Neptune is this color, or yes, Neptune does look like that. How did the tablet know that? How did that? We've wanted all these 100 years or 50 years, waiting to see if this tablet was right. How could we ever know if this is true? And then it is true. Why would these people back then know that? How could they possibly know that? Was it? And there's only really two possibilities. Again, we go back to aliens giving us information, or a race on the planet that was much more advanced than we realized. And not only do we realize this through finding these tablets and things like that, but we also realize it through, we find these underwater cities and these inscriptions and inscribings and things that we never thought were there, and they're detailed, and we can't figure out how they made them. And the idea, when you say, like, I can't figure out how someone made this, but it's from years ago, thousands of years ago, or the Mitchell skull, we can't craft something like this now. It's just all leads to a insane mystery that will bother me until I'm dead. It will bother me until I'm dead because something was here. People were able to do things, and that's just the way. That's the biggest mystery of all, and we don't know exactly what was going on, or how many races were here, or how many times this has happened on this planet. And are we a special planet where this just keeps recycling over and over again? And that's why people say, why do you want to go to space? Why do you want to travel somewhere else? And it's because, well, we want to go somewhere before we get erased here. And maybe we're forgotten about, and it was all for nothing again. In which case, it would be bad. I believe I lost Dave. I think he just signed back on. I think we lost him. Let's take a phone call while we're waiting for Dave to get back. He should be back in a second. 201, what's going on?
I was one last week. I called in about the whole ghost thing.
Oh yeah, man. What's I remember that.
So I just want to get into the Samaritan thing, but first I did a little bit of research in the house. Like I may send it to you.
Yeah.
But like I said, my whole street was actually farmland, or like basically my whole block around was all farmland.
Yeah, it looked like it.
And so, basically, from what my understanding is, this guy must have been a farmer or something before, like.
Yeah, it wouldn't be
like, this house isn't here.
It makes sense, man. It seems like it's a farmer. Someone spent a lot of time out there, and maybe who knows what. I mean, you'd have to. It would be hard to find out. Like, 'cause you'd probably be able to find out that the guy died, obviously, but the circumstances of his death, that may be tougher because it could be that far back. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
But no, that's very interesting.
You guys were talking about the Samaritans and whatever. I don't know if this really links them exactly, but you guys remember the story of David and Goliath?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So David Goliath, like when Goliath was around, he was 10 foot tall, whatever they said.
Yeah.
And everybody else was small. How about this may seem like a really weird, but why don't this Goliath was something like a Bigfoot, a big monster or an alien or something in that category? If it was kind of like an animal, kind of like a Bigfoot, or an alien.
Well, I don't know how it pertains to David and Goliath, but yeah, I guess with the Bible, yeah. But yeah, I mean, they could be. I mean, I'm not familiar with I know the story. I don't know the origins of the story. I think Dave might know the origins of that story, but is that in the Bible? That's in the Bible, right?
That's in the Old Testament, and there was many, many stories of giants inhabiting the planet during these times. So,
and that connects,
I don't believe that it was aliens or a Sasquatch. However, funny that you mentioned that and the Sumerians, because Gilgamesh was a king from the times of Babylon, essentially. So it was after Sumer. But the gods were still around at that point. And apparently this guy had wanderlust. He wasn't satisfied. So the gods decided to create a companion for him, somebody that would be his buddy. His name was Enkidu. And he looked like a Sasquatch, according to the myth. This guy was sort of like a feral human being that had a lot of strength. And apparently Gilgamesh, who was half god and basically half giant, because the gods were giants, had the strength enough to fight this guy. So again, the Sasquatch and Enkidu, that is a related story.
So one last thing, you guys were talking about before people who can tell the future.
Yeah.
I touched on this a little bit, that me and my family have that.
Yeah.
And a week before my grandmother died, I actually predicted her death by inch by inch. And I told my mom in the car, I'm like, Grandma's gonna die next week. And she said, don't say that. I'm like, I'm telling you she's gonna die, and I described it perfectly. I said, when she dies, will my other grandmother pick me up? Shit, you not. A week later, my grandma picks me up.
That's
from,
weird.
School.
Well, if you
And,
like I said, but with what you said last week, I mean, you're able to, if you're able to notice these things and see that stuff, it could be part of the connection we were talking about with time travel. Seeing in the past and seeing the future. Could be a gene that that's in your family. But I know you said your friends saw the ghost though, but
yeah, they did.
It's still something that you get. You get this sort of intuition or whatever, and especially when you're younger, it seems like. And as you get older, if you only have it a little bit, as you get older, sometimes it just fades away, or you ignore it, or you forget it. And other people go the other way with it, and they enhance it. But where you'll go with it, I don't know. I think I didn't ever use it, but that's really interesting. It could be. So I would keep an eye open for when it happens again, or when it.
Yeah.
And if it does, tell me about it, because I'd like to know.
Yeah. I sent you that video where I kind of see if I can get a response. Did you hear anything towards the end? So I thought I heard a ruffle, and now I was sitting down.
Yeah, a little bit, but it's so hard to hear that I couldn't really make out anything.
Yeah.
If I was one of those guys with a TV show, I'd probably have jumped around and said I heard that or something, but I didn't hear it in the audio.
All right. Well, thanks for answering my call, guys.
All right, man. Good call. I lost Dave Rose again. I don't know what's happening with. We're losing connections again. The government's taking away Dave Rose. They're trying to stop us from talking about the Sumerians. I don't know where he went. Oh, he's back online again. He's either they're trying to take him off. Trying to take Dave Rose off. Guys, if you guys can click the like button, that would help us out for sure. If you guys want to support the show, I'm coming up with a way to support the show. That way, you know, many of you guys may not be from my other channel. A lot of people are from our other channel, but there's a lot of people that are going to hear this that aren't, so I don't want to mix both things. And I'm going to come up with like a place to put that eventually. Looks like we lost Dave again. I'm going to try to call him again. Well, there we go. Final Frontier News, guys. I hope you guys can check out the page all the time, youtube.com/Final Frontier News. And I do want to mention to all you guys again, Dave is back, by the way. I want to mention to all you guys again, thank you for leaving reviews on iTunes. It is very, very big for us, because when you go over to iTunes, or if you have an iPod and you go on iTunes or wherever it is, and you look up the show on the podcast form, and you click to review it, the reviews help the show shoot up the charts and get heard by way more people. So we would absolutely love it if you could click the like button here, but also if you have access to iTunes, or even if you don't, you just go on iTunes on Google or something, and leave a review for the show. That would very much help us out. Dave, anything you want to close on before we, as we get out of here? Perhaps it's my connection. Well, I don't, man, I gotta be honest, guys, his Skype is not wanting to connect to me. It's all messed up. And he's getting booted off the internet and stuff. Once again, Devious Dave Rose, you know, they're coming for him. One thing I did want to mention real quick before we go is the idea of the Sumerians. On many of their writings about the Anunnaki, you'll see them pictured as wings, and you talk about them coming down from the sky. And we talked about Gilgamesh, too, and you know, coming down from the sky, you know, was, whether it's aliens or whether it was another civilization on the planet that had access to flying capabilities. And it was said that, you know, these beautiful women, or the alien, there was a female alien or a female foreign person, we'll say, whichever side you believe, if you believe it, she would come to the Sumerians, and she was known for taking the men. Taking them away, but they would never return. She would take them and they wouldn't return. And I believe it was Gilgamesh who turned down this creature, whether she was an alien or whether she was from another part of the planet. Gilgamesh would not go with her, because every time she would arrive, whether it's from the space or whether it's from the part of the planet, yeah, she would take a male. And he would not. Gilgamesh didn't want to go with her, and I believe that story is. I believe that's fairly true. But you know, Dave, you here?
Finally back.
Okay, was it me or you?
Skype keeps messing up strangely.
Yeah, it's been doing this, man. Someone's trying to take you. Someone's trying to take you away, Dave.
They know my number then. They should just call me to my cell phone, and we'll go have an espresso, and we'll discuss things like civilized gentlemen, like in a Bond movie or something.
Well, I had a fun time, Dave. I just gave my little, I think it's a story about Gilgamesh and a female Anunnaki coming down. Whether the Anunnaki is alien or, you know, from another part of the planet, but she would take a male from the Sumerians, and they wouldn't return. And then Gilgamesh would not go with her. I don't know if that's, you've ever heard that, but...
The goddess Inanna, I believe.
Anunna, yeah, there you go.
Yep.
See, I do know something.
You definitely do.
All right. Well, you know, is there anything you wanted to add to the about the Anunnaki or about the Sumerians, and before we go here? And maybe there's time travel is possible, Dave, and maybe it's not just time travel where some of these people on the planet used to went, or maybe it's just space travel itself or dimensional travel where they went. But I'll let you go.
Well, I just want to say that we've just covered the tip of the iceberg here, and we're just going to keep going hard here on Final Frontier News. So be sure to tune in for the next episode. We're going to have a lot more in store.
Much more coming, guys, and I'm going to put up a vote for you guys soon on Twitter, to where you can vote for which episode has been your favorite so far, episode 1, 2, or 3. And we're also going to probably put up another poll asking you what the next topic should be. And we'll get to that. Also want to let you know that May 10th, of course, we're going to be joined by a special guest. So that is, I think that's next week. So yeah, next week we're going to have a real special guest. And it's going to be, that will be a little bit of a different show, I think, next week. It will be it's basically going to be very interesting.
I'm very excited, actually.
That episode, that could probably go a lot further. We got Bob Mitchell coming on. He's your fellow Canadian.
He is, and I'm quite interested to hear what he has to say about the topic he's going to talk about.
Well, not only is Bob going to come on, but the person that basically he wrote the book with is going to come on as well. And I'm just looking for his name because his name is escaping me right now.
Jason, I believe. Was it Jason?
Oh, it is Jason, but I can't
remember his last name.
Oh,
but yes, you guys
Quit.
are all in store for an amazing show. There's so much that that's going to be discussed.
We're going to talk to Jason Quit and Bob Mitchell, and it's about forbidden knowledge, revelations of a multi-dimensional time traveler. And Jason Quit has many claims of abduction, dimensional travel, and picking his birth parents from the beginning of his life, which I was unaware of. In fact, when I told Leah about the book, she said, "You idiot, you bought that, you're crazy." And then I said, well, yeah, the only thing that I wasn't on board with was how he talked about picking his parents. I thought that was just a little bit crazy. And then she said, well, I had that dream. And I was like, what? It's like, so you think I'm crazy for buying this book, but then you tell me you've had this dream. And that just really got me even more interested now, because Leah is someone who doesn't exaggerate or do anything other than the fact that she knows. And to say that just drew my interest even more. And I'm halfway through the book. So, and I don't read, Dave. I mean, if you get me to read that much, it's impressive. And not to say I don't read, but you know what? I don't pick up books and get through them anymore. But I picked up this book and I got halfway through it. I'm going to hope to have the whole thing done by the time they're on next week. It's Jason Quit, and they're going to be on the show next week. It'll be Tuesday night, same deal. Probably start a little bit earlier, and they are prepared to give, I don't know if we'll go that long, but they're prepared to give 2 hours, he says. So this could be quite the story. And then, of course, we'll talk about the book, which the book is here. Let me get a little quick shot of it. For those listening, of course, you can't see it, but this is the book. And it's a great book. It does have some funny, well, we'll leave it for next week. Guys, thank you for listening. This was Final Frontier News, and this was episode number 3. It is May 3rd going into May 4th. Now it is May 4th as it's midnight on the East Coast, in the northeast of the U.S., and Dave up in Canada, of course. And wherever you're listening to us around the world, whatever continent, wherever you are, I thank you so much for listening and opening up your mind. And we will see you next week for more Final Frontier News.
Listening to Final Frontier News.